Ugly Loser gets shot and is reincarnated into a magical world where he unlocks his SS rank powers after saving a girl. Lucian was a jobless, pathetic loser just like me who tried every day to get a job, but no company was willing to accept him because he was so ugly. Finally, one evening he got a job by promising to give the boss the Gluck Gluck 2000 in the bathroom, and happily started walking back home. While he was lost in his thoughts, a robber emerged from a shop after shooting the policeman with a gun. He starts running away, but the policeman turns out to be a total Sigma male and tackles him to the ground. Unfortunately, the robber was an American, so he ends up shooting an innocent bystander who turns out to be Lucian himself. He falls to his knees thinking about how the last thing he ever did in this world was sell himself like an only fangirl for some money. Everything turns black in front of him when suddenly he hears the voice of God, who tells him that he was impressed by Lucian's performance in the bathroom and decides to reincarnate him in a fantasy world of magic and monsters. Lucian opens his eyes and finds himself standing in an open field all alone when he suddenly looks up to see a giant red dragon flying above him. He gets up once again and checks his stats, only to realize that this life seems just like a game and he has been assigned the healer class, which is probably good for him as he is too big to be a warrior and face monsters. He checks his pockets to find a couple of pennies, which he got last night after standing near the red light. He decides to earn more money respectfully in this life and starts walking when he suddenly stumbles upon the corpse of a dead monster, which scares him and he runs away once again. After walking for a while, he finally reaches the gates of a city that is guarded by a bunch of soldiers. He realizes that everyone going into the city is showing an ID card and paying some fee, but he doesn't have anything. He is called by the guards who ask for his identification, but Lucian makes up a lie, saying that he was raised inside the forest as a healer, but got kicked out of the clan because he was too ugly. The guard tells him to shut the hell up and goes inside, only to come back with a strong, independent woman named Lumi. She takes one look at his ugly mug and tells him to follow her inside, while the guard warns him that Lumi likes to be the top in a relationship. Lucian doesn't give a damn and starts running after her when he runs into 3 adventurers and falls to the ground. They look at him angrily and ask who the hell he is, and Lucian replies that he is a healer. At first, the adventurer seems to get angry as he doesn't like healers, but decides to let him go after Lucian smiles at him like a femboy with daddy issues. Lumi walks up to him and tells him that she would have killed the adventurers if they decided to hurt him, which is obviously a lie because she's a woman. Later, Lucian follows her to a giant guild hall, and once inside, she tells him this is the Healers Guild and that he should get himself registered here. He walks up to the front desk and starts filling out the form before telling the receptionist that he has the IQ of a Stanley water bottle and doesn't remember the name of his village. She tells him to write anything and takes the form back before returning with a brand new ID card for him. He closes his eyes and focuses on the card when suddenly it shows him his rank, which is G. She congratulates him on joining the guild, and Lumi decides to leave when he stops her and tells her that he doesn't know any spells and has no magic training. She looks at him with disgust but tells him that he has 3 options. Option 1 is training like a crack addict every single day. The second option is to follow capitalism like America and take loans to go to school and then stay in debt forever, or the third option is basically being an intern, which everyone knows is legalized slavery. He decides to go with hard training, and Lumi tells him to stay at the guild and practice for 10 days, after which they will see how he does. Kuru, the receptionist, shows him a tiny room that is still bigger than the house of an average New Yorker, and he notices a spell book near his bed. He immediately gets on the bed and starts reading the book like young girls reading Twilight fan fiction. He decides to try out some of his magic, but realizes that he is too weak to perform any real magic, so he keeps trying till his mana gets completely depleted and post-nut clarity hits him as he lays on the bed crying. He wakes up the next morning and decides to train again, but instead of climaxing completely, he starts edging so that post-nut clarity doesn't hit him that hard. Slowly he gets better at it, and his stats increase a lot when suddenly a pretty girl walks in his room with some food and introduces herself as Monica. He thanks her for the food, and with a full belly, he tries the spells again and succeeds at last. He goes down to inform Monica about his achievement, and she asks him to give her a coin because she is forced to stare at his ugly face. He hands over the money, but mentions that he is Lumi's, which scares Monica, and she immediately returns his money, saying that everyone is scared of Lumi and the massive sword in her pants. His pants get a little wet at that thought, but he decides to focus and goes out to practice his healing magic and earn some money. On the way, he ends up spotting the 3 adventurers once again, and they start messing with him. Suddenly, a bunch of ugly adventurers walk up with several injuries, and the leader named Baz immediately goes to check on them. Lucio suddenly remembers that Monica told him that, just like in America, healthcare is very expensive. That's why people can't afford a healer. Just like any white blonde girl who thinks that she can change the world, Lucio decides that he will be different and offers to help the adventurers. He takes them all to a back alley where he used to conduct his business behind a dumpster when he was alive. He starts healing the girl but ends up being a one-pump chump. He hardens up again, and this time he reaches a climax with the girl and ends up healing her. He repeats this process on all the other adventurers until only one adventurer remains, but before he can heal the last one, he starts feeling drowsy as he has expended all his mana and falls to the ground. Later that night, he brooded over his incompetence and decides that he will be training even harder to increase his mana pool. The next day, he goes over to the Adventurers Guild, where he finds the best girl in the show, Nana. She tells him that he doesn't have any fighting abilities, so he can't be an adventurer yet. He pleads with her to find him a teacher, who will teach him how to fight. She thinks for a while and then returns back with a 6-foot guy who bags all the on Tinder and then leaves them the next morning. He tells Lucio that he likes femboys and will teach him how to fight, but Lucio will have to give him the guac guac 2000 every day. Lucio once again sells his soul like a total thought and agrees with him before going back to his room to rest when Monica comes back with some food. While eating, she tells him that if he is able to increase his level to 5, she will do gland-to-gland combat with him. This gives him a lot of motivation, and he trains super hard for the next week and finally decides that he is ready for his training with the 6-foot Giga Chad. He thanks Kuru and leaves for the Adventurers Guild, where the blonde bimbo tells him to go into the underground basement, where kids never return. This idiot decides to go in regardless and finds an insanely big training hall inside and the Giga kids standing there ready for the training. He introduces himself as Broad and tells him to start running around the ground as a warm-up. He starts running out of energy but remembers how pathetic he was in his last life, where he couldn't even move when the bullet hit him, so he decides to cherish this life and starts twerking instead before falling to the ground completely exhausted. Broad realizes that this guy must have been a Discord mod in his old life who never touched grass, so he makes him train even harder by making him stretch, and after that, he tells Lucio to try and kick him. Lucio gets ready and throws a kick that is weaker than your jawline, and Broad easily stops it and tells him to go all out on him. Lucio tries to throw a punch but misses as he is too slow. He then decides to throw a punch and kick combo, but misses everything and gets slapped to oblivion by Broad. He gets up once again and jumps up to land a punch in slow motion, but Broad dodges away, forcing him to throw another punch, which he misses yet again. He tries a final kick, but Broad easily blocks it and kicks him to the ground. He tells Lucio that he needs to train every day as he will die immediately if he faces any monsters. Lucio decides to heal himself, but Broad stops him and tells him to stop being a and let his natural healing abilities work, and he agrees, thinking that this way he could save it for when he is really hurt. Suddenly, a bunch of adventurers come down with a thought who seems to be hurt. Lucio runs towards her and asks what happened, so she shows him the wound she got from the monster. Lucio was lost in her juicy thighs for a little bit, but immediately snapped back to reality and decided to heal her completely. This really surprises the thought, and immediately all her friends also want a piece of Lucio. After he is done satisfying his customer, Broad walks up to him and tells him that he wants him to practice his healing magic every single day till he is completely exhausted, then use meditation to get all the energy back. Lucio promises to practice hard, but also claims that he doesn't have a lot of money to eat food. Broad ends up telling him that he could stay in the guild itself and get food if he lets him tap that ass 3 times a day. Lucio is surprised at Broad's stamina, but like a new actress in Hollywood, she decides to agree to this demand as well. Later that evening, he takes a bath while Broad watches, and he gives him a bunch of clothes before leaving. Lucio dresses up and starts smelling a bunch of dirty laundry just like you all, but Nana catches him and asks him to hand it over so that she can wash it. After that, he walks down to the bar where he finds Broad sitting with a bunch of food, and he tells Lucio to eat as much as possible, as he likes his boy toys to have a thick ass. Lucio eats like it's his last day on Earth and then returns to his room. After having a sausage party with him, Broad decides to leave and tells Lucio that tomorrow's training will be harder, so he should get some rest. He tries to sleep, but he is too excited, so he decides to stretch his body, practice some spells, meditate, and finally sleep. The next morning, he is woken up by Broad, who takes him to the tavern, where he gets his breakfast handed to him by a fatty who is definitely banned from being near any kids. He produces a big jug filled with Jungkook's piss that any girl would die to drink. The fatty tells him to drink it like he drinks other slimy things, so Lucio simply closes his eyes and bottoms up. Suddenly, his entire body starts flowing with energy, and he starts eating his food like Sam Sulek after his steroid cycle. After that, he goes down to the training hall and starts training once again, but misses all the punches, only to get punched in the guts and fall to the ground. Thankfully, Jungkook's piss gives him extra energy, so he gets up once again and starts sparring with Broad as he attacks him with a barrage of punches, while all he can do is try to block them. Finally, Broad finds an opening and delivers a massive uppercut that sends him flying to the ground. Rod thinks that he is done for the day, but Lucio gets up once again, ready to fight. This really excites Broad, but before he could beat the shit out of Lucio again, a cat girl enters the training hall, asking whether Lucio heals people without charging a lot of money. He obviously jumps on the thought of being able to smell a woman and immediately runs up to her, asking her to show where she got injured. The beast girl turns around to show a bite mark on her waist, which is totally kinky. Lucio immediately starts chanting his spells and he heals her completely. She turns around with tears in her eyes and starts sobbing. Suddenly, an adventurer calls him and asks him why he is healing the beast people when everyone is racist towards them. Lucio replies that racism is pretty gay and that real alphas are never racist. The guy smiles at him and asks whether they can come back again if they are injured, and Lucio nods in agreement. The girl jumps on Lucio to give him a hug, which makes you all even more pathetic than him. Later that evening, he goes back to have dinner, where the fat creep again comes up with a jug of piss, which he is forced to drink before going to bed. While walking through the hallway, he suddenly notices that a lot of people seem to be following and keeping a watch over him. He goes back to bed, thinks about all the girls he has stalked in a similar fashion, and goes to sleep. The next morning, while having breakfast, he tells Broad and Fatty about these stalkers, and it turns out that people are stalking him because they are worried he will run away. This confuses him, but Broad explains that most of the adventurers are very poor and can't really afford a healer, so when they get injured in a battle, they are forced to take rest and then go back to earn money again. But with him being around, they are able to quickly get healed so that they can keep earning money. Lucio confirms that he will not go anywhere for at least a month and tells them that the next person who tries to stalk him will have to get a golden shower. The next few weeks go by pretty fast, and he starts getting to know a bunch of people from the guild who he has healed before. Broad has also started training him to become the Beast Titan in the future, but he's pretty bad at his job, as even my grandma can throw harder than this sissy. Finally, after a few more days, the month comes to an end and Lucio's contract gets over. Broad congratulates him for completing his basic training and asks what the hell he's going to do now. Lucio claims that he has been caught by the government for tax evasion and needs to pay a bunch of money to the guild. Broad decides to buy him once again, hands him a bunch of silver coins, and tells him to pay the guild the taxes and then come back to the training hall. He thanks him for his help before rushing back to the Healers Guild and paying off his taxes. After that, he returns to the Adventurers Guild, where Broad immediately takes him down to the basement to tap that ass. Later that day, Lucio sits back to have lunch when the fat creep comes again with a huge jug of Jungkook's piss and forces him to drink it again as he gets ready to train even harder. The next morning, Lucio gets ready to train some more when Broad tells him that today's training won't happen in the hall, but instead in the kitchen, where he wants Lucio to learn how to butcher animals to show vegans how life is lived. He seems to be a little taken aback, but follows the hall into the back kitchen, where he is greeted by Gal, who is Fatty's older brother. Gal welcomes him in and tells him not to worry, as he will first show how it is done. Following that, he immediately takes out an entire pig out of his bag that he definitely stole from Doraemon after robbing him. Gal starts butchering the animal while Lucio looks on like a pathetic vegan loser who wants PTA to have absolute world control. Gal further tells him that they use this meat to feed the population of this city, but the real reason why Lucio is here is different. Rod sent him here so that he could learn about different monsters in the forest and their weak points so that he could defend himself in the outer world. Lucio immediately gets scared, saying there is no way he can fight a monster, but Gal tells him to stop being a as hundreds of adventurers go out to fight every day and a lot of them die on the battlefield, never to be seen again. In order to heal other people, he needs to save himself first, and for that, he needs to stop being such a... Gal then pulls out a horned rabbit from Doraemon's bag and tells Lucio to butcher it. He is completely shocked but decides to try it and starts cutting into the animal, somehow managing to finish it. Later that evening, he sits down when Fatty tells him that his clothes are all dirty and that he should go wash them. He goes outside and starts washing them when suddenly Nana comes over and asks whether he is okay and actually holds his hand for a while, which makes him bust immediately. Later that night, he tastes the rabbit stew and decides not to be a shitty vegan anymore. The next morning, while walking through the hallway, he gets intercepted by Nana and two other girls with really thick plots. They dragged him into the library and started producing all the different versions of Kama Sutra that they had. Lucio chooses to read Nana's book, so the rest leave while she starts teaching him about all the different positions that people in this world like. After that day, every single day, Lucio would train with Broad, help Gal in the kitchen, and then study with Nana in the library. Soon enough, 6 months pass by, and just like an Instagram influencer, His clothes start sticking to his body. Nana tells him that they don't tolerate thottery and takes him out to buy some better clothes, and after spending the entire day shopping, they start walking back. On the way back to the guild, they suddenly hear a scream, and Luciel runs towards the voice only to find Monica lying in the alleyway in a puddle of blood like an average New Yorker. They take her back to the guild and heal her up, while Luciel asks Nana who could be behind this attack. Nana claims that it might be some random robbery, but Monica wakes up and claims that she was attacked by a man sent by some healer group. This confuses Luciel, but Monica explains that a couple days ago, one of her friends got sold into slavery because she didn't have enough money to pay the healers. Monica took to Twitter and started the hashtag abolish slavery, and those healer gangs got annoyed by her wokeness and decided to shank her. Later that evening, Monica arrives in the tavern and asks Luciel how much she owes him for saving his life. Luciel, being the gentleman he is, asks her to simply let him tap that ass once, and she agrees. A couple days later, the attacker ends up getting caught, but he refuses to name who hired him, so he is sent to Epstein's Island. A couple of months pass by when suddenly one day, Broad comes running inside and tells Luciel to follow him as some adventurers are gravely wounded and need his help right now. They run through the alleyways while Broad explains that these adventurers were out in the forests when suddenly a weird creature attacked them from behind and injured almost all of them. They finally enter the house they are being kept in, and Luciel spots a shitton of adventurers just lying on the ground injured, but Broad takes him to a different room where 3 adventurers who were almost dead were kept. Luciel goes up to the guy with the bleeding stomach and tries healing him, but is forced to use almost all of his mana to close the wound, which causes him to collapse. Broad captures him and hands him some Red Bull that gives him wings, and he again starts healing the other 2 poisoned teammates. After they are all safe, he ends up collapsing again. And this time he wakes up in a room with Nana sleeping nearby. He learns that several people died while he was unconscious, which really saddens him, but he decides to keep pushing forward. Soon after that, several more months go by and he grows his stupid little ponytail and changes his clothes before informing Broad that he thinks that it's time for him to go into the real world and get more experience. Broad tries to stop him as he will miss the handies below the table, but like any girl who cheats, he tells him that that was all in his past and he has changed. He claims that he will try to learn magic and become strong, after which he will open a clinic and heal everyone for a very small fee. Broad wishes him luck in his delusional dream, and Luciel finally leaves the Adventurers Guild to explore the world. He starts walking and reaches the Healers Guild, where he meets up with Kuru and asks her to remove his guild card. She takes the card and goes inside, but seems to be totally confused and horrified after checking his stats. She asks what the hell he has been doing for a year. He tells her about how he trained every single day and drank Lord Jungkook's piss as well, which helped him get this strong. Kuru tells him that he has been promoted by 5 ranks, from rank E to rank C, surpassing all the ranks in between. He asks how much a C rank spell book costs, and Kuru replies by claiming he needs 90 silver coins for it, which is way too much. Luciel checks his pockets and finds out that he only has 3 coins left. Just when he was thinking about starting an OnlyFans club, Broad entered the guild, put down a huge sack of coins in front of him, and told him to come back to the Adventurers Guild for another year as he couldn't live without him. He promises to even pay him monthly while he is staying there and give him a free room. Kuru asks whether this guy is harassing him, but Luciel is a total thought by this point and agrees to go back to the Adventurers Guild. He settles down in his room once again with all the spell books that he needed, which were bought by his sugar daddy, Broad. Soon Broad comes into his room and Luciel thinks it's time to undress again, but Broad tells him to head down for dinner. As soon as he enters the tavern, he is surprised by all the guild members holding a party for him. He thanks all of them, while the fatty gives him the Lord's liquid once again. Everyone closes their noses while this mad lad drinks everything in a single gulp. Following that, he sits alone on the table as no one wants to come near his stinky ass, but Baz and his minions, who he saved from dying the other day, sit by him while Baz asks him whether he is interested in men or not. Like any insecure male, he immediately starts talking shit about the queer people, but Baz tells him that they are very progressive people and support the movement. Luciel looks at their happy faces and remembers how he bumped into them the first day in this world and got scared shitless, but now he has started liking this world. The other minion from Baz's group offers Luciel a trip to the place where the Twitch girls stream, and this insult immediately agrees. The next morning, while practicing in the training hall, Luciel overhears some voices when suddenly a huge, fat, ugly bastard straight from an NTR manga comes in while Nana tries to stop him. He immediately spots Luciel and walks up to him, asking if he is the healer. Luciel affirms his suspicions, and the ugly bastard claims that his name is Bot, and Luciel suddenly remembers that he was suspected of ordering the attack on Monica a couple of months ago. Bot orders him to quit the Adventurers Guild right away as he will be working in his clinic, but Luciel outright refuses. Bot gets mad at this and tells him that he has no choice but to join his clinic because ever since Luciel came to this town and started healing people, Bot's clinic has not been able to make a lot of profit. Luciel tells him that it sounds like a you problem, which pisses him off as he starts blabbering about how great he is as he can cast the highest level of healing magic. Luciel calls him a scammer as he charges a lot of money for even the smallest amount of injury, and if the patient is unable to pay, he sells them off to slavery. Bot gets mad at these accusations, and like every adult with 2 brain cells, he tells him that Luciel is young and will understand when he grows up. Luciel calls him on his bullshit and tells him to piss off, but Bot decides to take matters into his own hands and tells his goons to kill Luciel. Thankfully for him, Big Daddy Broad was around, and he grabbed both the goons and asked the ugly bastard whether he wanted to get slapped as well. Bot gets scared and immediately runs away, followed by his underlings. White Luciel thanks Broad for his help. They all go upstairs where Luciel is informed that a lot of people have noticed him and a lot of goons might try to kill him in order to get money from Bot. To make sure that doesn't happen, Broad tells him that he will start a new training regimen today in which he will have to train like Sam Sulek. This really scares him, but before he can object, Broad takes him down and starts throwing him to the ground. Luciel gets up once again and tries to land a combo, but Broad dodges and counterpunches him before kicking, slamming him to the ground and choking him out in a non-kinky way. By the end of it, he starts looking like my ex-girlfriend on Instagram Live, but surprisingly enough, he stands up once again, all bloodied up like a zombie. Later that night, Monica tells him that people have started taking inspiration from him and are training more and more in order to become better, as they have faith that if something happens, Luciel will be there to heal them up. This gives him some inspiration, so the next day he tells Broad that he wants to train even harder. Broad tells him to protect himself with magic, and then, without a second thought, he slams Luciel down on the ground like a sack of potatoes. Luciel gets up completely shaken, but Broad congratulates him for surviving as according to him, an average adventurer would have died from that attack. He tells Luciel that it's time that they got serious and throws him a sword sharper than my sister's tongue and a shield. They start their training every day of the week with swords, spears, different kinds of magic, and hand-to-hand combat, along with learning about spells every single day, which starts boosting his skills tremendously. The next couple of weeks passed by without much happening when, one day, while Luciel and Broad were having food with the fatty and talking about life, Nana walked in with a letter in her hand. She hands it over to Luciel, who is confused about who might want to send a loser like him a letter. Surprisingly, the letter turns out to be from the Pope himself. He opens the letter and finds out that the Pope got to know about him from someone, and he thinks that his abilities are being wasted in the small town. The letter then claimed that the Pope wants to give Luciel a promotion, which means that he will be working alongside the Holy Church in a completely different town. The Pope gives him an ultimatum of 6 months by which he needs to leave the Adventurers Guild and present himself in the Holy Church. Luciel seems confused, but Broad immediately claims that this is all set up by none other than the fat, ugly bastard Bot. According to Broad, the ugly bastard wants Luciel out of the way, but at the same time he doesn't want to be like a villain. So he decided to send a letter to the Holy Church advising them to grant Luciel a promotion. The Holy Church will take him away from the city and force the adventurers to go back to his clinics to get healed at extraordinarily high prices. Broad tells him that they can't really do anything about it, and it would be for the best if Luciel simply trained as hard as possible so that he could learn how to fight to the best of his abilities. That evening, Luciel trains super hard and after that lays down on the ground completely exhausted, while the stupid cat girl annoyingly pokes at him for no reason. Suddenly, Fatty walks in the room and hands Luciel a large jug of the Lord's holy water so that he can recollect his energy, while the cat walks away as far as possible to escape the stench. Luciel, however, drinks it all in one single gulp, which turns the Fatty on just a little. Later that evening, the Fatty goes down and tries to have a conversation with Broad, but like any roided-up gym bro, he starts flexing his muscles to show how much better he is. Fatty tells him that if he had remained an adventurer for a while longer, he could have gotten the SS rank badge, but instead he decided to retire after getting the S rank. He then tells Broad that Luciel has been drinking Lord Jungkook's holy water all this time, but does it even work? To that, Broad replies that all the teenage girls seem to get really excited when members of a Korean band come anywhere, so there must be some power in them. Soon enough, Gal also enters the room and sits beside Broad and informs him that he investigated this matter and found out that it was indeed Bot who decided to send a letter to the Holy Church urging them to promote Luciel. Broad seems to be worried about Luciel's safety, but Gal tells him not to worry, as he has arranged for some people to take care of him. 6 months pass by in a flash, and Luciel is again forced to part ways with the guild that helped him so much. He enters the training hall one last time, where he meets up with Brod, who gives him a bunch of instructions about surviving in a different city and tells him to leave the Holy Church immediately if he feels like his life is in danger. Luciel promises to follow his advice and then asks Brod for a favor. Both of them go outside as the sun is setting and enter a cemetery where the people affiliated with the Adventurers Guild are buried. He sits down by the graves and claims that even though he saved a bunch of lives, there were a lot of lives that were lost as he was simply not strong enough to save them. He tells Brod that now that he is gone, the adventurers have nowhere to get themselves treated and will be forced to go to people like Bot, who will scam them and leave them poor and homeless. He turns towards Brod and tells him that he doesn't want this to happen, and he begs him to start a training course for the rookie adventurers so that they learn the basic skills to survive in the real world. He claims that he was able to help so many people because there were a lot of people who helped him when he was super weak. He wants the rookies to be trained by Brod and Gal so that they can learn about basic combat, as well as how to kill a monster. He tells Brod that if the adventurers have basic training, their injury rate should decline, which will basically bankrupt the big healers like Bot, who will be forced to reduce their fees. Brod gives him a smile and promises to create a basic training course, and then asks Luciel what he thinks about Monica. Luciel blushes and claims that Monica is a nice girl with a decent rack, and everyone knows that thick thighs save lives. Brod laughs and tells him to say his goodbyes to the girl as well, as it turns out that both Monica and Nana were hiding behind the graves and eavesdropping on their conversation. They both come out, and Luciel immediately thanks them for all the help that they have provided him. They both start blushing, and Monica claims that it was him who saved her when she was about to die and that she will never forget that. He breaks the news that he has to leave the guild and go to a different city now, which makes them cry, but he promises to come back as soon as possible and comforts them the best he can with that ugly face of his. The next morning, the entire guild gets together to see Luciel off while he has a final conversation with Brod about how he will never forget their nightly training sessions on the bed. The guard on the gate informs Luciel that his carriage is ready, so he thanks all of the guild members for helping him through the tough times and promises that he will come back and repay their kindness one day. Brod tells him to stop the cheesy dialogues and hands him Doraemon's pocket, which can contain a huge amount of items inside alongside a small pouch of money. He tells Luciel that this gift is from the entire guild, which makes him cry like a little. Soon the sissy goes out, still crying about it, when he reaches the main gate of the city, where the guard informs him that his carriage is ready with some people inside it. Luciel gets confused as he didn't expect to travel with company, but runs up to the carriage to greet them only to be surprised by Baz and his gang. He starts crying like a little once again as Baz tells him that he looks like a girl, foretelling him to get in so that they can begin their new adventure. Luciel and the adventurers soon reach the Holy See. Baz asks him if he plans to go right away to the Holy Church and give a handy to the Pope, but Luciel says that he is out of Lord Jungkook's fluids, so he must get some supplies at the Adventurers Guild first. However, he feels that someone might take advantage of him because he looks like a sissy, so he asks Baz and others to accompany him. Baz goes along with Luciel, and instead of going to the reception, he takes him straight to the cafeteria. He asks a waitress to call the guild master because he wants to introduce Luciel to him too. Soon after that, the guild master arrives there and Luciel introduces himself as a healer. Suddenly, everyone starts to look at him with disgust, like he's a TikTok thought in a crowd of Sigma males. However, the guild master has heard about Luciel being Brod's bitch, so he has no problem helping him out. Luciel then orders 3 barrels of Jungkook's piss, which he cannot live without, but no one believes him. The guildmaster brings out a pint to test the boy's claim, and everyone is shocked as they see him down it in one gulp. Luciel gets 3 barrels of the legendary liquid and puts them in his magic bag. The guildmaster then asks him if it is true that he heals most patients just for 1 silver coin, and he says that he only does that for the people who are kind to him. With that, he heads to the Holy Church, which also doubles as the Healers Guild headquarters. Luciel is shocked to see how big it is, but that is because he hasn't seen my wand. Baz and his buddies tell Luciel farewell, and he tears up like a little again. He then moves to the Holy Church and tells the 2 receptionists that he has been transferred here under the direct orders of the Pope. He wants to talk to the manager, but explains that he is not a Karen. The receptionists call a priest named Gran, who is the one going to supervise Luciel from now on. He tells the boy to follow him, and then he opens a door using magic. Next up is a magical elevator, and Gran tells Luciel that this is the only way in and out of the Holy Church to prevent intruders, but he feels that it is to keep people from escaping. They soon reach their destination, and Luciel spots the knight Louis, who was the first one to help him in this world. Luciel is really happy to see her and gets turned on as he learns that she remembers him. She invites him to her room for Netflix and chill at night, and Lucille asks Gran if it is okay. Gran says that since Lumi is the captain of the Valkyrie Paladin Regiment, she can have whoever she wants. She leaves, and then Gran takes Lucille first to a room where he fulfills his sadistic kinks, and then to a plain interrogation room. He slides Lucille a letter from Bot that claimed that he was harming other healers' businesses in the previous city, and asks him to tell his side of the story. Lucille realizes everything now, so he uses this chance and tells Gran the truth about how Bot and other healers were overcharging. That is why he made healthcare affordable to everyone and maintained transparency, which pissed off Bot. Gran understands his story and promises to talk about it with his seniors. In the meantime, he gives Lucille his appointment letter as a part of the Holy Church's spiritual cleansing unit. It's given the post of assistant priest and exorcist. Lucille is confused by his job profile, and Gran tells him that starting tomorrow, he will have to exorcise ghosts and zombies. His wages will be 20 gold coins per month, which is more than enough to buy all the fan subscriptions he wants. After that, he goes to Lumi's room and tells her his story over a cup of tea. He tells her about his new job of exorcising ghosts, and Lumi thinks that it is too much for a sissy like him. She tells him that the location he will be taken to is an old underground graveyard that has turned into a dungeon. Lucille knows what a dungeon is from his lessons with Nana. It is a place where magic gathers and combines with the feelings of the dead to create treasures and monsters. Lumi is impressed by his knowledge because she enjoys dominating nerds like him in bed. He then asks if there are any merits to the job. Lumi tells him that the finder's keeper and anything he finds in the dungeons, be it treasure or shit, is his to keep. He can sell monster cores to buy expensive skill books, and Lucille is excited. However, there are demerits to the job too. There are a lot of stinky fluids in dungeons that smell worse than fermented fish, but Lucille is used to Jungkook's piss, so he has no problem with it. The next morning, Lucille goes and meets up with Gran and another priest named Jord. Gran gives him a special robe made out of holy fiber and a badge, signifying that he is an A-rank healer. The robe repels bad vibes and pulls bad bitches, so it costs 10 platinum coins. He also gives Lucille a pass to use the magic elevator even without him, but also puts various conditions, like not bringing any thoughts from outside the holy church to his room. Lucille swears that he won't try anything mischievous, and the pass glows. Gran tells him that if he breaks his vow, the pass won't work, and he will get serious punishment all night long. After that, Jord takes Lucille to the dungeon, and he can smell the disgusting odor of rotting flesh immediately. They soon encounter a zombie, and Jord sends him to the kingdom come with a purification spell and collects the magic stone it drops. Lucille has also studied the purification spell recently, and it can cleanse pretty much everything, from your crusty white socks to evil spirits. Jord leaves Lucille to his job with that, and he marches ahead with the sword in his hand. Soon he is attacked by a horde of zombies, and Lucille says the purification spell so quickly that you will give Eminem a tough competition. The purification spell disintegrates all the zombies, and Lucille thinks that now that he has defeated a few monsters, his level must have gone up. Unfortunately, he is still a level 1 loser, but he doesn't care. He is already getting 20 gold coins per month for this job, so he can just go all out and train while killing zombies. Since the purification spell consumes a lot of mana, Lucille comes up with an innovative solution. He enchants his sword with the purification spell and uses it to cut through zombies easily. Lucille feels that it is a walk in the park compared to Brod's training. He even fools around and finds out that healing magic will also work just fine to kill zombies. Lucille quickly clears the first floor of the dungeon and then heads to the second floor, where he finds a horde of zombies right at the entrance. He avoids them and finds a floating spirit in the air, which is also really easy to defeat. His stomach suddenly starts growling, and Lucille decides to take a lunch break. He eats sandwiches and drinks the Lord's liquid, whose foul stench forces even the zombies to stay away from him. After that, Lucille clears the second floor easily and then heads to the third floor, where he finds a horde of skeleton monsters. He wets his pants upon seeing them and immediately blasts them with purification magic. However, he runs out of magic with that and decides not to call it a day. As Lucille returns to the gate, Jord is waiting for him. He hits him with a purification spell to remove the terrible stench coming from him. Seeing his senior look so carefree, combined with the fact that his level didn't go up even after killing so many monsters, Lucille arrives at the conclusion that this dungeon is just a simulation to train newbie priests. Jord then takes him to the shop, where he can exchange the magic stones he got from hunting monsters for weapons and spell books. Jord calls out Kat, the owner of the store, who asks Lucille how his first day dealing with ghosts was, and he tells her that it was quite easy. Kat then asks him to hand over the magic stones he got and tells Lucille that they are worth over 4,000 points, which is among their best figures for a rookie. She asks Sid if he wants to buy something, and since her used clothes are not for sale, Lucille decides to buy some spell books. Kat tells him that the books are quite expensive, even with his considerable haul. Lucio then moves on to the weapons that are made of holy silver, which is really effective against all kinds of ghost-type monsters, since only exorcists are allowed to purchase them, and most of them don't know how to use weapons. There is no demand, so the price is quite low. Lucio feels lucky and says that after earning some more points tomorrow, he will buy a sword and a spear. Kat gives him a newcomer discount and tells him to have both of them for 4,000 points. Lucio happily walks back to his room while singing Taylor Swift songs, but gets a jump scare as he sees Gran waiting for him in the corridor. He just wanted to check up on his progress and is pleased that Lucio faced no difficulty. After that, he gives him a shitton of instructions, his priest uniform, and then more instructions. The next day, Lucio goes to the dungeon wielding a weapon in each hand. He knows that if Brod saw him doing something so ridiculous, he would put both the sword and the spear up his ass, but he doesn't mind that. Lucio keeps on exploring the dungeon and gets some loot from killing zombies too. He acquires over 5,000 points after reaching the 5th floor, and Kat is starting to worry about his mental and physical health now. On the 3rd day, Lucio starts from the 6th floor. He kills the stronger variants of zombies easily and has no problem slashing the flame spirits before they attack him. However, just as he is getting too cocky, the dungeon gives him a reality check as he steps on a trap. 3 magic arrows pass right in front of him, and Lucio is glad that he didn't get hit by them. As he is making a note of it, a horde of zombies approaches him, and he clears them using a purification spell. On the days after that, Lucio becomes more cautious when exploring the dungeon as he keeps looking out for traps. The number of zombies also increases, and while dealing with everything, he racks up a lot of points, but his level is still 1. On the 10th day of his job, Lucio reaches the 10th floor of the dungeon. He defeats 20 zombies with a single purification spell and then decides to go to the 11th floor soon. However, as he finds the door to the boss's room, he decides to call it a day, fearing that he is still not strong enough to take on the boss. He talks with Jord about it, and he is shocked to learn that the sissy boy has already reached the point it took him 6 months to find, just like his girlfriend's G-spot. The next day, Lucio goes to the boss's room in his peak form. He has even bought a costly bow to fight the boss and other monsters in the room. Before entering the dungeon, he drinks up a huge glass of the Lord's liquid to get some instant energy. He opens the doors that are as thick and heavy as my neighbor, and as he looks around, the door slams itself shut. Lucio sees a small spirit in front of him, but rather than attacking him, it flies around the room and reveals a huge horde of monsters waiting for him. Lucio gets a fright attack, but he calms himself down and chants the purification spell. However, the dungeon says psych because magic is as disabled as Stephen Hawking's in the boss room. Lucio panics as he runs away, thinking that he should have gained more information about the boss room before coming here. As he is backed up against a pillar, a zombie scratches him, and for the first time, Lucio feels that this place is really dangerous. In his frustration, he lashes out at the zombies and starts killing them one by one. He finds that he can enchant his weapons with a purification spell and uses that technique to fight against the monsters. After a while, he has defeated all the monsters but is quite exhausted as well. Lucio remembers Brod and all their nighttime training, which made him strong enough to deal with this situation. He then starts picking up the magic stones when suddenly, a dark tornado appears behind him and pushes him on the floor. Lucio looks up and finds a skeleton wearing the robes of a priest. He realizes that the fight earlier was just a warm-up and the monster he is seeing now is the real boss. He tries to heal his injuries to get in a fighting state, but his magic is still disabled. In frustration, Lucio throws his spear at the skeleton boss, who dodges it easily. Lucio uses his bow next, but his arrows can't hit the boss either. However, this has confirmed his hunch that the boss fears weapons made of holy silver. He recalls how Kat once told him that ordinary healers cannot use magic while holding weapons because they are pathetic at multitasking, and he decides to use that fact to his advantage. Lucio plans to wait for the boss to use a magic spell on him, and he can finish him off in that moment. The boss suddenly releases its dark aura, and Lucio keeps on shooting arrows at it. The skeleton boss dodges everything, but as it tries to use a magic spell, Lucio can hit it easily. He thinks this is his chance, and he enchants his sword with purification magic and strikes the boss. However, those attacks were not enough to defeat the skeleton, and it healed itself immediately. Lucio was anticipating that as well. He impales the skeleton boss with his spear, and then chops off its skull with his sword, hoping that it will be enough to destroy the boss for good. The boss disintegrates, leaving behind its robe and staff, and now Lucio can use his magic to heal himself. He then picks up all the loot, and just as he is about to return to the surface, the door behind him opens up automatically. As Lucio looks at the staircase that takes him to the floor below, he thinks that he will check it out tomorrow, as he is getting hungry now. He goes to the shop after that and tells Kat that he had a rough time today and only a Guac 2000 from her can fix him. He then shows her the magic stones he collected, and Kat is shocked as Luciel tells her that he beat the monster mom as well as the boss on the 10th floor. She is frustrated that he was being too reckless to go to the 10th floor so soon, but as Luciel tells her that no one explained things to him, she realizes that it is not his fault that he was born with only 2 brain cells. She then exchanges his magic stones for points, and Luciel can't believe that he earned over 100,000 points today. Next, he shows Kat the robe he got from defeating the boss, and she is shocked to see the necklace on the robe. She tells Luciel to put it in his bag and follow her, and he obeys her like the wimp he is. Kat takes him directly to the Pope's office, and Luciel can't believe that Kat is such a big shot that she doesn't even need an appointment to meet their head. They get permission to enter and kneel before the Pope, who is a woman hiding behind a veil. Luciel thinks it must be some kind of joke because of course a woman cannot be the Pope. Kat then tells the Pope about how Luciel is a rookie exorcist who has cleared the boss room on the 10th floor. The Pope believes Kat's words and gives Luciel permission to speak to her. She learns his name and then tells him to put the loot he got from the boss on a tray. The Pope looks at the robe and the staff and confirms that they belong to a high-level priest who vanished in the dungeon about 12 years ago. She then explains that the necklace reduces the mana consumption by 50%, while the staff disables the magic power of everyone near him. Luciel is shocked to learn that they were such OP tools, and then the Pope says that she wants to buy them from him. Luciel is confused and looks at Kat, whose gaze tells him that she will neuter him like a stray puppy if he refuses. He had no reason to refuse anyway, so he agreed to give the items to the Pope, but also made a request. He tells her that the Doraemon bag he has is not big enough to carry all his loot and asks her to give him something bigger and better. The Pope tells him to have a magic pouch which can hold as much stuff as the room they are in, but it will still be too small to hold your mom. The Pope then asks Luciel to keep up the good work and see her if he finds more interesting items like this. With this, they leave the room, and Kat tells Luciel that the shit he just pulled by bargaining with the Pope is not something most people would dare, and he immediately fears that he's going to kill himself with 12 gunshots to the back of his head. The next day, Luciel compiles a list of mistakes he made while fighting the boss. The list of mistakes is longer than the list of reasons girls refuse to date me, and Luciel wonders if there is a place where he can continue training. After that, he heads out to have breakfast when he runs into Lumi on her way. Lumi has heard about his exploits in the dungeon the other day, but Luciel tells her that he is not satisfied with his performance right now. Lumi invites him to have breakfast with them so they can discuss what is on his mind, and Luciel is really happy to receive that offer. However, he soon realizes the brutality of women when they call him stupid, ignorant, ugly, bud-brained, and reckless for charging into the boss battle alone. Luciel gets knocked out just by their harsh words. He asks the women to have mercy on him, because being humiliated with words is not his kink. Luciel says that he wants to return to Broad and train some more, but that is not permitted. Lumi tells him that it is no problem, and if he wants training, she and her girls can help him train his ass as much as he wants. After that, Luciel once again enters the dungeon, clears the 11th floor with ease, and finds there is nothing special there. He visits Kat's shop after that, and she gives him the magic pouch that the Pope has given him. She asks him to channel some magic into it, and it turns blue, revealing that Luciel's gender is still male. She explains that he can put anything in the pouch just by touching it and reciting a spell, and take things out by imagining them. Also, he can see everything that is inside the pouch. Luciel finds that there are a lot of spell books inside it and learns that the Pope gifted them to him. Thanks to this lucky spurt, Luciel quickly explores the 15th floor of the dungeon. The next day, Luciel joins the training session of the Valkyrie Paladins under Lumi, and he quickly fits in with them because he is a sissy at heart. He introduces himself to everyone before telling Lumi that even if they are much more skilled than him, he finds it hard to raise a hand on a woman. Lumi takes offense to this as she's a feminist, but she tells Luciel that he will come to his senses soon. She then starts running, and all the girls follow her. Luciel thinks it will be easy because he used to run a lot when training with Broad, but he finds out that the girls here are all roided up. They overtake him within a few laps, and whatever masculine ego Luciel had is shattered, and he is humiliated when the running ends. Next up is a sparring session, and Lumi decides to violate Luciel herself. She immediately rejects him when he wields a spear and a sword, and she tells him to fight her properly. Luciel changes to a sword and shield and attacks Lumi. She easily dodges all his slashes and then knocks the air out of his lungs with a punch. He starts chanting a spell, recalling a lesson from Broad about laying a trap for his opponents. The light from the magic blinds Lumi, and Luciel slashes her, but he finds that he still didn't hit her. Lumi is already behind him and knocks him out with a light tap to his head. Some girls slap him awake a few minutes later, and Luciel learns that the training is over. The girls say that it was a surprise that Lumi was serious while fighting him. They believe that she respected Luciel's efforts, and that is why she knocked him out. His training with the girls continues, and he soon starts showing his worth in the mock battles. The girls think that the team with Luciel has an unfair advantage because he can use barrier magic. Lumi agrees and says that Luciel is an odd case because he has mastered healing magic and holy magic at a young age. She calls him weirder and wilder than a Florida man, and Luciel takes offense to that. Lumi reveals that she has heard everything about his hard training in the Adventurers Guild and how he was brought there. Luciel is shocked because Lumi has more data on him than Facebook has on its customers, and he begs her to stop saying anything else. The next day, Luciel once again enters the dungeon. He encounters 3 zombies and quickly equips a sword and shield using the power of the magic pouch. He makes quick work of the zombies and then notices a raised tile and thinks that it is a trap for sure. However, he is confident that he can deal with anything now and deliberately steps on the trap. He activates an alarm and suddenly zombies come flocking to him. Luciel deals with them using his purification spell and then hacks through the rest of them with his sword. He keeps on exploring the dungeon till he eventually reaches the 20th floor. Luciel feels that the boss inside the room might clap his cheeks if he is not careful, so he retreats to collect information. He goes to Kat, who tells him that she has never even entered the dungeon, so she can't help him out with this. The next day, he goes back to the 10th floor boss room to practice fighting against mobs. The day after that, he is woken up by Eli, a paladin under Lumi's command. She is disgusted as she sees Luciel's ugly face and his bed hair, and then she tells him to get ready quickly, as they are going to train in dual weapon wielding techniques today. As Luciel watches Eli fight another knight, both wielding 2 swords, he feels that it is too dangerous for him. Lumi tells him to get into the ring, and he faces the girl Eli was just training with. The girl launches a barrage of attacks on him, but Luciel feels that he can defend against her attacks. He is about to counterattack after seeing an opening, but the girl hits him with a cartwheel kick and knocks him out. Next, Luciel fights with Eli and decides to charge at her, but she disappears like my dad and then appears behind Luciel and trips him. He surrenders and then asks Eli how she vanished earlier. She reveals that she has an affinity for water and fire magic, so she created an illusion using mist and tricked Luciel into thinking she had vanished. After training with the girls for a few more days, Luciel finally challenges the dungeon's 20th floor. He opens the heavy doors and finds that armed zombies are already waiting for him there. Luciel charges at them with determination, and thanks to his training with the girls, he is able to clear them safely. The boss defeats some rare drops this time too, and Luciel takes them to the Pope. She thanks him for retrieving the items and says that they once belonged to a high-level priest. The Pope then gets nostalgic as she states that the underground cemetery turned into a dungeon only about 100 years ago. No one knows the exact cause behind this, but before the dungeon formed, the underground had many wonderful facilities other than the cemetery. Luciel is perplexed because the Pope is talking like she was present then, and her voice is like she can still audition to be on Epstein's Island. The Pope continues to saying that they made numerous attempts to keep the dungeon sealed and prevented the monsters from coming out and attacking humans. Luciel asks her if it is not possible to destroy a dungeon permanently, and the Pope replies that it is possible. She states that if the core of the dungeon is destroyed, the dungeon will vanish itself. However, no one has ever reached that level. On top of that, the number of people being born with the job of a paladin has been decreasing in the past decades, so they lack manpower to clear the dungeon. That is why she wants Luciel to keep exploring the dungeon. She asks him if he has any requests this time, and he immediately asks her for some anti-undead armor and weapons. The Pope agrees to his request and even promises to promote him when he becomes a rank 7 healer. That was more than Luciel could ask for, and he is excited to enter the dungeon again. Soon after that, Luciel goes to the Adventurers Guild to stock up on the Lord's liquid, and everyone gives him creepy stares as he does that. The guildmaster is flabbergasted to hear that he needs 10 barrels, but he has no problem if Luciel can pay for them. After that, the guildmaster asks him to work at the Adventurer Guild as a healer, like he did in the previous town. Luciel cannot work here full-time because of his job at the church, but promises to help them out on his free days and declares that he will heal everyone just for the price of 1 silver coin. The guildmaster immediately takes him to the basement, where they are keeping all their injured people, but they immediately get hostile when they see him in a healer's robe. They call him a capitalistic pig who extorts money from dying people, but the guildmaster shuts them down and tells them about the legendary sissy healer from another town, who heals people for just 1 silver coin. The adventurers have only heard stories about Luciel before, and they can't believe that he is the real deal. They begin chanting his name as they ask him to heal him, and Luciel tells them to pipe down. He declares that he is not going to be their permanent healer, and they will have to rely on other clinics more than him after all. He lays out a few conditions for healing the patients. The first is to not attend other clinics if they charge high prices, and the second is to help him or other people from the Holy Church if they are ever in trouble. With that, he casts a wide area healing spell and saves everyone in one fell swoop. Everyone is grateful to Luciel for that, and they call a meeting to give him a fitting title. They finally settle on calling him Saint Weirdo because he is a little bit of both. Luciel is creeped out as everyone starts chanting his new nickname, but there is nothing he can do to stop it. After that, Luciel goes to Kat's shop and tells her that this time he is planning to go camping in the dungeon. She replies that it is too reckless, but he tells her that he only comes back outside to sleep. He has Fugan weapons in his pouch, and he thinks that he can just camp in the empty boss rooms after clearing them. Kat is forced to give up in front of his determination, but tells him to return alive at all costs within 1 week. Luciel promises to do so, and he takes off. He returns in a couple of days, and Kat is freaked out that he hit his goals before even a week. She then tells him that the items he requested from the Pope have finally been delivered. Luciel receives a magic sword and magic shield, along with a full-plate armor worn by paladins. Also, he receives a special pillow that makes him sleep soundly and wake up fully refreshed. Soon after that, Luciel goes to the Adventurer Guild to fill up his stock of Jungkook's piss and to send some letters to his friends. He has visited them numerous times and has become good friends with all the adventurers there, including Elitz, the top dog at the guild, who has taught Luciel the physical enhancement skill. Luciel demonstrates his progress with the skill, and it turns out that he sucks at using the skill. Elitz says it is unusual because Luciel's magic control is great, and even though he is so strong, he is still stuck at level 1. He replies that it is because he has not slayed even a single real monster yet, as he believes the zombies in the dungeon to be faker than the Kardashians. Soon, the waitress comes there and calls him to heal all the injured people. Luciel uses a bunch of spells to make everyone better, and then asks them if they have any information about Lumi and her team or his friends from the previous town. One adventurer tells him that Lumi and her group are doing well on their mission, and another has news about Broad becoming a kidnapper who drags unwilling people to his training hall. On top of that, the fatty chef is making more recipes that taste and smell like the Lord's liquids. However, the most shocking news is that many receptionists at the Adventurer Guilds are going to get married soon, and Luciel gets the shock of his life. Because he was a sissy when it came to making a move on the girls, they have chosen other men. He panics because the adventurers have no names about which receptionists are getting married and hopes that it is not Nana and Monica. He falls to his knees and hopes that they will at least call him to the wedding and let him have a quickie one last time before tying the knot. Luciel eventually moves on from this news and gets back to his job of clearing the dungeon. Now he can use high-level spells using his magic sword to cast wide-area spells to kill many mini-bosses at once. He clears the boss room on the 30th floor and obtains a large amount of loot. He takes it back to Kat, who lets him have a feel of her rack while saying that she was really worried about him. She then hands Luciel his car, and he finds that he earned a little over 400,000 points this time. Kat advises Luciel to stock up on some mana potions because they will save his ass when he runs out of magic. He agrees and says that he was able to defeat the boss this time because of the top-level skill called Area High Healing. Kat is stunned to hear it he can use such a great skill at such a young age and asks him if he is taking steroids to increase his growth. Luciel explains that he never used anything shady to become strong, but then recalls that he has been consuming Lord Jungkook's piss for as long as he has been training. Kat drags him to the Pope's room, saying that he should confess all his guilty secrets to her. The Pope first commends Luciel for clearing the 30th level of the dungeon by himself, and then Kat tells her that Luciel has been drinking some shady stuff for the last 2.5 years. Luciel takes out a barrel of the Lord's liquids to show that it is not a drug, and everyone is instantly disgusted by the smell. He quickly puts it in and casts a purification spell to clear the bad smell. He then reveals how Broad and the fatty chef introduced him to the liquid, saying it would increase his strength. The Pope seems to know a fair bit about it and says that at first the unique item was in the shape of a pill. It was created by a high-ranking sage, and the pill could awaken the latent talent of anyone who ate it. However, it was rare and expensive, so the sage decided to turn to capitalism, cut costs, and make a cheaper version, which is the liquid Luciel drinks. He claims that he has been drinking 3 mugs a day for the past 2.5 years to grow strong, and both the women in the room are disgusted by it. The Pope calmly praises his grit, and Kat asks him if he can drink some of her fluids later. The Pope then changes the topic and asks Luciel what kind of monsters he met this time and what loot he received from them. Luciel tells her about his battle and then presents the items he got from the boss hunt. The Pope gets sentimental as she claims that the items are from her old friends and dismisses Luciel immediately, promising to give him his reward later. The next morning, Luciel visits Kat's shop again, and she hands him a letter from the Pope detailing the effects of Jungkook's holy water. Luciel decides to read it in the dungeon, and as he leaves, Kat wishes him all the best for his future and tells him to come to her if he needs anything. In the dungeon, Luciel reads the documents that were written by the sage who made the liquid. He finds that the liquid acts on the three basic desires of humans, namely, the desire to eat, the desire to sleep, and the desire to be an animal in bed. While it sacrifices one of those urges randomly to greatly increase the physical ability of the person consuming it. Luciel begins to wonder which one of his urges has been sacrificed. He loves to eat and sleep, and that only leaves him with the third option. Luciel realizes that his little buddy never grows big even when he is with pretty girls or when it is 6 in the morning. He realizes that the reason Kat was pitying him earlier was because she thinks he is the reverse of Mr. Johnny Sins. Luciel fears that it might be true that he can never get up where it really matters again. To prove that his fears are wrong, he decides to get rid of his virginity for real when he leaves the dungeon. However, it has been months, and he has yet to receive a reply from Monica or Nana. To get the thoughts out of his mind, he rushes to kill the monsters and keeps on destroying them to overcome his frustration. In the month after getting this news, Luciel explores the floors of the dungeon and finally reaches the boss room on the 40th floor. He hesitates to enter it without preparation and decides to go to the Adventurer Guild to get some information. At the gate, he meets a homeless girl and thinks that if someone spots him with her, they will call the FBI. So he takes her inside, where he is welcomed by his two favorite girls, Nana and Monica. Luciel asks them what they are doing here, but before they can answer, some adventurers grab him and take him to heal the injured. Luciel heals them like he is doing a Super Mario speed run and tells the waitress to see what the trouble is with the beast girl he found earlier. He goes back to healing, but his mind is still on Nana and Monica, and he fears that they are here to tell him that they are going to get married. He barely holds back his tears as he heals all the adventurers, and then the waitress tells him to hurry to the slums with the girl he found. Nana and Monica volunteer to join him, and the guild master also decides to come with them for their safety. They reach the slums, find many injured and sick beast people, and learn that they are refugees who got attacked by bandits on their way to the city. Luciel approaches a man who is standing up even though he is unconscious, and just as he decides to use Area High Heal, the man suddenly stabs him. The PTSD from dying in the past life hits Luciel harder than the bullet did, and he feels he will die again. But he gets a grip on himself immediately and pulls out the knife before using Area High Heal to heal himself and everyone else quickly. His girls come to support him after he is done, and he tells them not to mind the man who stabbed him because he did it unconsciously. He heals and disinfects other people too, and as he is drinking a mana potion to recover his power, more people from the slums come to him begging for help. Being a pushover, he agrees to give them the equivalent of first aid for free. He heals people and even purifies the dirty canal running through the slums before lecturing them about the importance of cleanliness. At night, he's finally able to catch a break and takes the two girls to a fine restaurant. Nana says she was worried about him when he was stabbed, and Luciel feels great that she cares about him. After that, he asks the girls what they are doing here and how the guild is running without them working as receptionists. They say that things are going to get really busy because two girls are going to get married, and Luciel turns to stone on hearing this. He asks them who is getting married, and they tell him that it is the other two girls that no one gives a shit about. They ask him why he is asking this when they clearly wrote about it in their letters, and Luciel is shocked to hear that they sent him letters. He says that he never received a letter from them, and in turn, they reply that they never received a single letter he sent them as well. Luciel is so shocked that someone showed him definite proof that the earth is not flat. He confronts the guild master about this, and he sheepishly replies that he forgot to deliver his letters because he was too drunk. Luciel is angry at him, but then Elitz interrupts him and asks him which of the two girls here is his girlfriend, because he wants the remaining one. Luciel freaks out at being asked this question and friend-zones both girls. He says that they are his close friends, and without their moral and oral support, he would not have been able to keep drinking the Lord's liquid and endure Brod's training. Everyone is shocked that Luciel trained with a retired S-rank adventurer, but he ignores them like your crush ignores you and goes to the girls. He wants to spend as much time as he can with them while they are here, and they immediately take him to heal the remaining people in the lobby because they get wetter than the Atlantic Ocean when they see him in action. While they're time together faster than I finish in bed, and Luciel doesn't get to do anything with the girls. They just treat the injured, have a feast, and then finally leave back to their town. After that, he returns to the Adventurer Guild and finds the man who stabbed him bowing and begging for forgiveness. His touch from Luciel says that he doesn't mind it because it couldn't be helped. The man then reveals that they are not refugees but ambassadors of another nation who came here to meet the Pope and get her help in establishing a clinic in their country. They thank Luciel for helping them stay alive to do that, and as the two of them engage in a bowing contest, the girl from before comes and hugs Luciel. He quickly realizes that she can speak as much as most men would want their girlfriends to. In short, she is mute because of a childhood accident. Lucio pats her head and calls her a hero for saving everyone, and then casts a spell called Extra Heal on her. Even though he's only started learning it, he hopes that it helps the girl out. Soon after that, he meets up with Lumi and tells her how anxious he is to enter the boss room on the 40th floor. She asks him if he would like to spar with her to sharpen his skills, and he agrees. He equips his magic sword and shield and keeps on defending against Lumi's ruthless attacks. He quickly changes his strategy and throws a dagger at her to take her by surprise. Lucio fears that she will get furious at him, but she is impressed that he managed to catch her off guard. They train some more, and Lucio is completely exhausted by the end of it. Lumi tells him that he has greatly improved and asks him not to take on the boss on the 40th floor yet because he can still improve. 6 months after that, Lucio is finally man enough to enter the boss room, and Kat gives him a letter from Lumi, who is out on a mission. The letter tells Lucio about the opponent he will probably find in the boss room, and just as Lumi wrote, he finds a gigantic skeleton monster that once used to be a captain of paladins. The skeleton paladin uses a spear and a greatsword, and Lucio can only dodge his attacks. Lucio casts a purification spell on the skeleton, but it has no effect. He then throws a dagger at it, but it seems to do little damage. The boss attacks and injures him, forcing him into a corner. As a last-ditch effort, Lucio takes out 3 barrels of Jungkook's piss, and their stench is enough to keep the boss back away. Lucio uses this fact to his advantage and attacks the boss with different strategies. Whenever he gets injured and needs to heal, he quickly moves to the safe zone behind the barrels and even sleeps there. This continues for a week, and now Lucio is running out of food. He can't escape the room before beating the boss and fears that he is going to get a game over message over his head anytime now. He has finally realized that the dungeon is more real than climate change, and he will really die if he is defeated here. Lucio decides to give it his all to win the fight and charges at the boss. The skeleton paladin blocks his attack with his sword and then tries stabbing him with his spear. However, after fighting it for a week, Lucio has memorized its attack pattern and he sees an opening. He manages to cut through the sides of the boss and then sends its head flying with a powerful slash. The boss is finally defeated, and the only loot he drops is a spell book. Lucio is glad that he can finally return home now, but as he tries opening the door, it doesn't even budge. Well, since he cannot return to the surface, Lucio decides to go deeper and rushes towards the 5th floor instead. He straps a barrel of the Lord's liquids to himself, so that it keeps the monsters away while he sleepwalks through the dungeon. He finds some treasure chests on the way and easily reaches the boss room on the 50th floor soon. He has also reached the end of his food quota, and as he finishes his last sandwich, Lucio wonders if he will die a virgin in the dungeon. He fears that he will become a dungeon boss after dying and decides to pull all stops before he goes to fight. He summons the spell book he got from defeating the boss on the 40th floor and finds that it teaches a spell called Sanctuary Circle that creates a safe zone that purges all the magic with dark affinity within it and even burns all demons and ghosts within the circle. After learning the spell, Lucio enters the boss room and finds a great number of angry ghosts there. Suddenly, the final boss materializes in front of him in the form of a zombie pope. Lucio feels he is worthy of being called the final boss and decides to hit him with an area high heal. Before he can complete his incantation, the boss hits him with a punch and Lucio barely dodges it. Ghosts release from his fist and rush at Lucio, who uses a purification spell to deal with him. Using that chance, the zombie pope reaches behind him and begins charging a dark magic spell. Lucio realizes it is the right time to test out the spell Sanctuary Circle and immediately creates a small safe zone around him. As soon as the zombie pope touches it, he gets a severe burn and is pushed back against the wall. Lucio is glad that the spell worked, but it consumes a lot of mana, and he is almost out of it. He chugs a mana potion as the zombie pope approaches him and realizes that he cannot continue being on the defensive for long, as his mana potions are also going to end soon. So he comes up with a risky idea to end the fight quickly, and begins saying the full incantation of the Sanctuary Circle. Just as the boss is close enough, Lucio slides the Sanctuary Circle like he is sliding his number to a girl at a bar. The circle encloses the zombie pope and he gets hit by the purification power of the spell. The boss screams in pain and Lucio wonders if he won, but he quickly gets his answer in the negative as the zombie pope approaches him even as his body is being dissolved. Lucio backs away, chugging mana potions, and falls on his ass. Suddenly, he sees a human face behind the zombie pope for a brief moment before he completely vanishes. Lucio thinks that the zombie pope was trying to tell him something before dying, but he couldn't quite catch it. He then takes a look at the loot. There is a book with forbidden holy magic that he intends to deliver to the pope, and a weird halo-like artifact that he stores away as well. Suddenly, a bright flash of light appears behind Luciel, and he turns around to see a rectangle on the wall. He fears something terrible is going to happen, but then finds that it smells kinda sweet. So he approaches the glowing portion and touches it, and his magic power gets sucked like the wall is giving him a Guac Guac 2000. Soon, a magic door opens up, and Luciel follows the staircase to find what it is leading him to. He comes to the lowest floor of the dungeon and finds a giant injured dragon sleeping there. Luciel shits his pants immediately because there is no way in hell he's going to fight a dragon. However, he calms himself thinking that if it is an undead, he can get rid of it using a sanctuary circle as well. So he drinks all his magic potions to fully charge his magic power, and then heads to the dragon for the biggest gamble of his life. Luciel uses the sanctuary circle on the dragon, and it screams in pain as the holy power hits him. After a moment of screaming, the dragon falls flat to the ground, and Luciel falls on his ass too. He wonders if he won and goes near the dragon, who turns out to be alive and conscious. He roars, scaring Luciel to death, but stops short of eating him. The dragon says that he is impressed that a human surprise attack really hurt him, and to reward him, he gives him all the treasure he has hoarded for centuries. Luciel can't believe that he can take it all, and the dragon assures him that it is not a trap, and after he takes the treasure, the dungeon will vanish. Luciel feels that the dragon is not hostile and decides to ask him more about the dungeon's purpose. The dragon tells him that a great evil god trapped him and other dragons in areas where dark magic was gathering, and this dungeon is one of them. He was hoping for a hero to save him, but no one arrived. He is glad that Luciel arrived to save him from his suffering, and that he is not greedy for the treasure he has rightfully earned. The dragon tells Luciel that he will give him his protection, which will make him harder to kill. He declares that the battles from now on will be even harder, and wishes Luciel to save as many people as he can, and probably some dragons too. The dragon starts disintegrating, and as Luciel touches him, he is reduced to a mere skeleton. He promises to make the dragon's wish come true and help as many people as he can. Suddenly, he earns some pretty far-fetched titles, including Blessed by the Healer God, Protected by the Holy Dragon, and Dragon Slayer. Luciel then packs up the dragon's skeleton in his magic pouch and receives a mystical staff and necklace. As he is wondering what they are, they start glowing, and he is immediately teleported to the entrance of the dungeon and immediately rushes to Kat's shop. She thinks she saw a zombie and throws some knives at him, but Luciel defends himself. He tells Kat that he is still alive, and she runs to hug him, and he feels alive down there too. She is glad that he is alive because he was in the dungeon for 6 whole months, and just now she thought he was an escaped zombie. Luciel tells her that he had a hard time in the dungeon, and Kat tells him that it is not the time to discuss that because there is something even more urgent. She drags Luciel outside the holy church, and he finds his buddies from the previous town there along with the city's guildmaster. Brod immediately places him in a stranglehold as he did in their nighttime training sessions, while he laughs that he is still alive. Luciel taps out immediately and asks him what brought them here, and before they can say anything, he hears the crowd cheering like Biden really waived off all their student loans. Before he can ask them anything, he starts feeling hungry, so they go to the Adventurers Guild to eat. There, Luciel learns that since he was missing for 6 months, the people fear that the Holy Church had locked him up so that he wouldn't reduce the market price of other healers. That is why they stormed the Holy Church, demanding they release their Saint Weirdo. After that, Luciel challenges Brod to a sparring match to check his progress and gets his ass handed to him again and again. Luciel gets stripped to the skin and climaxes over and over again as Brod gets as rough with him as he can, while everyone watches what they have only heard stories about. Later, Luciel thanks everyone who was worried for him and sends them off. Brod corners him after that and tells him that no matter how much he has grown, he is still too weak and should not do reckless things like this. Luciel then hands some letters to Brod and asks him to deliver them to Nana and Monica. He is furious that he got demoted from teacher to postman so quickly, but he thinks that he will make an exception this time. The 2 girls were really worried about Luciel, and they were about to quit their jobs and come here, but he somehow managed to convince them, and giving them the letters is the least he can do. Later, Luciel wishes Brod and others a teary goodbye before visiting the Pope to report his findings. The Pope is glad to see that he is completely fine and says that they sent Lumi and her team to rescue him when he didn't come out for long, but they couldn't make it beyond the 30th floor because of the foul smell. After that, Luciel tells everyone the story of his adventures in the dungeon. However, he leaves out the most important bits and declares that he will only tell them to the people he trusts, including the Pope, Cat, and Lumi. While other priests are angry at this, like the bunch of baby boomers they are, the Pope immediately dismisses them. He then tells the girls about the zombie Pope, the forbidden magic spell, and the most shocking of all, the undead Holy Dragon. He reveals that the dragon told him that the next hero will be born only after 40 years, and in the meantime, monsters will continue to become stronger as darkness envelops the world. The Pope is worried upon hearing all this, and she forbids Kat and Lumi from talking about this to anyone else. After that, Luciel asks the Pope why he is still stuck on level 1 like a loser, and she tells him to open his status window and check it out in detail. He says that his stats have increased but the level has not, and the Pope passes a scroll to him, which contains more information about the Lord's liquids he drinks. The liquid could sometimes have a drawback, making it very tough for the person who drinks it to raise their level. Luciel panics upon hearing this because he cannot decide between leveling up and keeping on drinking the Lord's piss to get stronger. A week later, the Pope organizes a celebration in honor of Luciel clearing the dungeon. She promotes him to an S-rank healer and a bishop-rank priest. On top of that, she gives him the special power to refuse orders from anyone except her. With that, she calls Luciel forward to address the crowd, and he panics because he has not given a speech since he left high school. He still gathers his courage and starts his speech about how the Holy Church is about to lose its power and credibility because of some greedy and arrogant healers. He declares that he will create new guidelines to regulate medical treatment fees and save this world from the American healthcare system that is in place now. He swears that he will spare no effort to save people and restore the glory of the Holy Church.